Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company of the 440 Sports Network. Postgame Live presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Of course, we're on YouTube at Stillman and Co. And we are live right after the Titans have annihilated the Kansas City Chiefs. And I just want everybody out there to know, before you get on me and before you say that I'm wearing a red sweater if you're watching the stream and you get mad at me for wearing a red sweater, just know that it is not because of the Chiefs. It is because we are having our family Christmas dinner. You know, our cousins came in town for for our son's birthday party. And so we're having our Christmas dinner tonight. So it's a Christmas themed sweater-ish. I guess, you know, Jewish boy doesn't have any Christmas sweaters, but it's a Christmas themed sweater-ish. It is not about the Chiefs, but that is where I do want to begin today's program here on Postgame Live, which is, look, the Titans absolutely crushed the Chiefs 26-9. I predicted on Friday that the Titans were going to beat the Chiefs. Now, I did not think that the Titans were going to beat the Chiefs this easily, but I thought the Titans were going to beat the Chiefs. And the reason that I thought that the Titans were going to beat the Chiefs is because Kansas City is one of those teams right now in the NFL where it is really Super Bowl or bust. And so to not have anything to play for, Kansas City's not used to that. Going on the road this close to Christmas, Patrick Mahomes is out. I just figured that Kansas City was going to mail it in. And then Gardner Minshew got hurt, which, by the way, I don't know if he was hurt the whole game or not, but he stunk. That was not the Gardner Minshew I remember with Jacksonville and the Colts that used to come in here and light the Titans up. But Gardner Minshew got hurt, and so the Titans won a game, and it is, in fact, bad that the Titans won this game. Because according to the New York Times playoff predictor, in fact, I think I should just go ahead and get this out for you. According to the New York Times playoff predictor, the Tennessee Titans now have less than a 1% chance of getting the number one overall pick in the draft. After knowing that your season was over as of week 3, you now have a 1% chance of getting the number one overall pick in the draft. If the Titans were to win out, so that means if they were to beat the Saints and if they were to, if they were to lose out, if they were to lose to the Saints and they were to lose to the Jags, they would have, again, according to the New York Times, a 2% chance of ending up with the number one pick. Translation, you're not getting the number one pick. Let's throw that up there on the screen. You're not getting the number one pick. If you had lost out going into today, you had more than a 50% chance of getting the number one pick in the draft. Now that pick is gone. And it's probably pretty likely that you're not going to get the number 2 pick in the draft either. Which means in a draft where I think there are going to be 2 quarterbacks, Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore, teams are either going to be able to trade out of that slot, and it's not you, or they're going to be able to pick a quarterback, and those are the teams that you should want to go out and pick a quarterback. So that's bad. And there's no way to slice it. But I'm going to try to be a little positive here today on Postgame Live, if I may. Last year, I remember when the Titans wrapped up the number one pick in the draft. And I watched it in live time because they lost to the Texans in a meaningless game that was as meaningless as today's game. And Buffalo lost to New England. Joe Milton played quarterback. And I remember watching that game and high-fiving my dad like, oh, yes, the Titans get the number one pick. And I think the Titans have botched it with that number one pick. Yes, I know Cam Ward played his best game. We'll get to that in a second. But I think they botched it because I think they picked the wrong guy. I think they put themselves in position where they felt like they had to pick Cam Ward, and they went out and picked Cam Ward. And I think that's been a disaster, and I think that will be a disaster regardless of today, which we'll get to in a second. The Titans are going to pick third in this year's draft. It is what it is. Maybe Ty Simpson will do enough in the college football playoff and declare for the draft, and one of these teams will be desperate to get the third quarterback, and they'll make a trade in order to do it. We saw a couple years ago when the Giants were picking at 6, and they were desperate to try to get Drake May. Now, if you think that Ty Simpson is Drake May, you're an idiot. But again, there are teams out there, like the Titans with Cam Ward last year, that are in fact stupid. So I would not put it past somebody. So maybe that is a silver lining. Maybe the Titans are going to end up with the best player in this year's draft, whether it's Reuben Bain or whether it's Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver out of Arizona State, or whether it's Arvell Reese, the pass rusher out of Ohio State. I don't know these guys well enough. I'm not Braden. But maybe they just end up with that player, and that player is a transcendently great player that they need as part of their rebuild. Because while they do need a lot of players and they do need a lot of pieces, I think we can all agree outside of Jeffrey Simmons, they need high-impact, game-changing players. So maybe they'll get that. But it is hard for me to not be upset and to not be sad about the reality of today's game. Because the reality of today's game for the Titans is this. Kansas City didn't show up. Kansas City has thrown in the towel. Kansas City ran out there the JV team, along with Travis Kelce, who after the beginning of the game, I'm not sure I saw. Kansas City lost their backup quarterback and put in some guy I have never heard of. And I watch a lot of college football. Again, I'm not Braden. I'm not Caroline. I'm not Mel Kiper. I have never heard of this guy that Kansas City put in the game. And all in all, what did you get out of it? And people will say that this team is learning how to win. They're learning how to win against a Chiefs team that mailed it in today. They showed up for the check, but they didn't show up to actually play ball. And for a lot of people that say things like, oh yeah, you think if a quarterback was here, this roster's so bad, this team's so bad, you think if a quarterback were to come in here and make a difference? Well, Kansas City can compete with anybody. They're not beating them this year, but they are competing with everybody with Mahomes at quarterback. Without Mahomes, that team is just as bad as the Titans. And that team totally mailed it in today. And again, I think they kind of ruined your future. And again, I know there are a lot of you out there that sit there and say things like, oh my God, Jared, you are such a hater. Oh my God, you don't understand. Oh my God. I know there are a bunch of you out there that believe that winning a meaningless game means something as far as the future is concerned, that, hey, these guys have now learned how to win because on a random Sunday before Christmas, they went out there and smoked Kansas City. I don't live that life. Again, I have the historical reference of the 2015 season where the Titans had to lose the last week of the year in order to get the number 1 pick. They did lose at Indianapolis that last week of the year. They got the number 1 pick. They traded that number 1 pick in 2016 to the Rams, and they ended up with Jack Conklin, Derrick Henry, Corey Davis, and Jonnu Smith. That's how you rebuild your team. I also lived through 2023 when Will Levis led that fourth quarter comeback on Monday Night Football against Miami, and we felt like maybe that was a breakthrough moment for Levis, and that meant nothing in 2024, and it meant nothing for Levis. So that's the first thing. Again, I understand people are going to say that's a losing mentality, and people want to sit back, and everybody wants to sit there and say, oh, no, it's okay, it's good they won. It's never bad when they win. That's not true. It is bad when they win. Because again, since week 3, you knew this team wasn't going to the playoffs. Since week 3, you knew this team wasn't competitive. So, that's first thing. The second thing is Cam. This was the best game Cam Ward has played. This season, as far as throwing the football is concerned, accuracy, pushing it down the field, and connecting, this is the best game Cam Ward has played. But I want to caution everybody for a couple of reasons. Number one, as I said, Kansas City has thrown in the towel. Next week when you play the Saints, and I'm not saying the Saints are world beaters by any stretch of the imagination, but the Saints have known for a while, just like you, they've known their season is essentially over. They know they're not very good. They know they're in the midst of a rebuild, and they've got Tyler Shuck out there. And I mean, the Saints just went and smoked the Jets. Not that that says much, but they went out there and smoked the Jets. By the way, Tyler Shuck had 308 passing yards today. The Saints are not going to be mailing it in next week the way the Titans got the Chiefs mailing it in this week. So Cam went out there and beat a JV team. And Cam went out and beat a team that, again, all week, this is a team that got to training camp and they were thinking about the Super Bowl. This is a team that plays every week in the 325 window with Tony Romo and Tom Brady calling their games. And if they're not at 325, they're on Sunday Night Football. Again, I think Amazon, when the schedule came out, creamed their pants over the idea of a Christmas Day game between Denver and Kansas City. And now Amazon's thinking, why us? Couldn't you give us a better game than this? With, again, this guy I have never heard of playing quarterback for the Chiefs. So Cam had his best game against what I think was essentially a practice team. And I think that's at least worth noting. That said, Cam did play his best game. And Cam, before the end of the half, threw 2 passes down the sideline, one to Io Manor, that was a dart, it was just dropped in the bucket. And then one of those plays that we see for Cam every other week, it's a lot like the Io Manor touchdown against the Rams. He made another similar play like that against the Texans. That backyard football, Cam Ward throws it, and he pops it right into a guy's hands right there on the sideline, and he did that with Chim DK, which set up the touchdown. Beautiful. Cam came out at the beginning of the second half. And I thought Cam authored a very solid drive to start the second half, which led to a touchdown. And again, at that point, I'm like, Titans, I think the score was 19-6 or 17-6 at the time. And I'm like, this game's over. Because I knew Kansas City wasn't getting to 17 with that Scarbini that they had out there at quarterback. So Cam played his best game. That said, Cam did miss the throw on 4th down to Gunnar Helm earlier in the game. And one thing that I think people don't want to talk about, but I think I am going to bring this up, I do believe this coaching staff has helped out Cam Ward. I know every time we talk about Cam and we get into the Cam excuses, it's these coaches suck and that nobody could win with this team around them and these coaches and these guys. Oh, God. And I'm like, if you don't see the improvement of the offense, which is coaching, over the last month, then you don't understand what a coach in the NFL does. Again, early in the game, they did not want Cam dropping back and throwing the ball down the field. And Trent Green on the CBS broadcast, he wouldn't shut up about it. Trent Green just kept talking about the fact that, oh yeah, they're dropping down, they're not putting the ball in the air. They're not throwing with a lot of air yards. It's all just bubble screens and they're dumping it off the Chig and well, that was the game plan. And the reason for that was they probably looked at George Karlaftis, who's not having a good year, but they probably looked at George Karlaftis and Chris Jones and said, if we're going to lose this game, it's going to be because we're going to drop back and those guys are going to kill us. So then as they got into the game, and they realized that those guys were not going to kill them because, again, for Karlaftis, he's never played in a meaningless game before. I don't even know if Chris Jones has played in a meaningless game before. But once you realize that, hey, these guys aren't really much of a threat, then you can start to drop the quarterback back and push the ball down the field. I also think over the last month, this coaching staff has figured something out with the run game because the run game is far more effective since the Cleveland game over the last 3 weeks than it has been since Mike Vrabel and Derrick Henry left. And I thought the touchdown to Chigakonkwo, the shovel pass, I thought that was an incredible call. We've been bitching, and this includes me, we've been bitching about these Chim DK jet sweeps from Bo Hardigree all year long. And I will tell you that they faked the jet sweep and then they shovel passed it into Chig. I thought that was a great call. So when it comes to Cam, I'm going to give him credit that this was the best game he played. Now, I think the context of Kansas City out there with nothing to play for an organization that has dreams of the Super Bowl every year, and they just lost Patrick Mahomes, I think that does kind of play into it. This is not like if you had told me at the beginning of the season, hey, Jared, the Titans are going to beat the Chiefs 26-9. And Cam Ward's going to throw for 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And then I probably before the season would have said, really? Holy crap. This is not the Chiefs. Yes, it was the Chiefs. Yes, they wore red helmets. Yes, they have that Kansas City logo. Yes, Andy Reid was out there. But this is not the Chiefs. And I kept saying that on Friday when, again, I picked the Titans to win the game. I said the Titans, they're looking at this game like, hey, we got a chance to beat the Chiefs. And the Titans, on the other hand, or excuse me, the Chiefs, on the other hand, they're looking at this like, we have nothing to play for. We're on noon CBS. Nobody's going to be watching, not even our families. Taylor Swift didn't even go to the game. They're probably all out Christmas shopping. They're over this godforsaken season. Patrick Mahomes is not even here. He's got ACL surgery. Fine. Fuck it. Let's go. That's what it was. And so take that with a huge grain of salt. And I do want to get to this before I get to all of your reaction. And we will get to a lot of reaction here on the program. So Diana Rossini had a list that was out as far as who the Titans might entertain to be their next head coach. And I, of course, absolutely read what Diana Rossini wrote. It would be irresponsible of me to not read what Diana Rossini had to write as far as the Titans and their coaching search and everything else is concerned. It would absolutely be irresponsible for me not to know what people are saying. And the list was kind of a hodgepodge of names. It kind of reminds me of Adam Schefter on 104 earlier this week when Adam Schefter just threw out a bunch of names that people are talking about. But I think what was Diana's list? Matt Nagy and Jeff Hafley and Jesse Minter and Chris Shula. And it just kind of felt all over the place. And I said, number one, I do not think. Oh, and Lou Anarumo was on the list. Number one, I do not think that Diana Rossini has the actual list of coaches that the Titans are considering. First of all, I think the Titans have sat around whenever they will report something that says, oh, the Titans have talked about Johnny Joe as a potential candidate. Well, no shit. And they've talked about everybody. They've sat there in a boardroom talking about everybody because that's what you do when you fire your coach is you start to think, okay, who can we hire? The second thing is this. I think Diana doesn't really know much as far as who they may want to hire or not. When it comes to Matt Nagy, I saw Carrington Harrison, who does afternoon radio in Kansas City. Carrington and I work together at Mad Dog Sports Radio. And Carrington said, imagine watching this Chiefs offense and thinking, yeah, I want that with Matt Nagy. There is nothing about what has happened this season or today that should shape your opinion of Matt Nagy one way or another. Now, I know it is inevitable that people are going to do that. But does it change your opinion about Andy Reid as a coach? What Kansas City has done in the past and what they have not done this year does not change my opinion about Andy Reid. I think Andy Reid is still one of the greatest coaches in the history of the NFL, and he is probably the most accomplished offensive coach of this era, with Belichick being the most accomplished defensive coach of this era. And it's probably not particularly close. So with Matt Nagy, I don't look at this godforsaken season that the Kansas City Chiefs have had and said, okay, this means Matt Nagy can't coach. But I think some people are going to feel that way. And I did see that PK said that a photographer was keeping an eye out on Mike Borgonzi and Matt Nagy and did not see any interaction between the two during pregame. First of all, if Mike Borgonzi wants to talk to Matt Nagy or wants to say hey to Matt Nagy, or he knows how to do that without doing it in front of everybody. The second thing on that front is that doesn't mean that just because they work together that Mike Borgonzi necessarily wants to hire Matt Nagy. And the third thing is Mike Borgonzi making the call? Again, I know that Mike Borgonzi has told people and the media believes that he's in control of the roster. Well, the roster is not the coach. And so that could be a Chad Brinker thing. But that having been said, I do think, and I've thought this for a while, that Matt Nagy was the favorite for the job. So it doesn't surprise me that that's what Diana Rossini is kind of highlighting. And again, I think it was Connor Orr that brought up Mike McCarthy last week. Again, that makes sense. But I wouldn't let what's happened to the Chiefs, I wouldn't let that be a reason to just punt on Matt Nagy. Okay. That said, let's get to your reaction today here on the program. First, though, let's talk about my friends at Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. That's right. They are the presenting sponsor of the Stillman & Company program. If you've got people staying at your home and you've got issues, whether it's no heat, whether it's plumbing, whatever it may be, Hiller's Emergency Service will take care of it and get your home right for the holidays. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, been in business since 1990, family-owned and operated, 100% satisfaction. Of happy, you'll be, the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work that is performed, Hiller will make it right. Learn more at happyhiller.com. Professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians that come into your home and leave it clean and better than they found it. Care is their core value. They believe that when they care about others, everybody wins. And I know this because I use Hiller at my home. They'll take care of the customer on every job, every time. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud sponsor of the Nashville Predators, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and the Tennessee Volunteers. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Oh, great. The spamming has started into the chat. I apologize about that. For whatever that's worth. Let's go to your reaction, as promised here on Postgame Live. Dixie says, I'm just here to see how you spin this into saying Cam didn't play that well. I thought this was Cam Ward's best game. And the biggest thing that Cam Ward did today that he has not done in the other games is I don't think Cam Ward made a glaringly bad mistake. He did not throw a ball into a defensive back's hands. He did not fumble the football carelessly with it in his hands. He did not do something stupid to hurt the football team. He protected the ball. He was able to push it down the field a couple of times, a couple accurate throws down the field, which was nice. Again, he's inaccurate. It's going to continue. The fact that he threw one pass, I think it was the one to Io Manor, where he hit him down the sideline. And then the next play, he threw wide of Chigakonkwo coming out of the backfield. I think highlights the fact that from one throw to the next, with the mechanics that Cam Ward has, he's not an accurate passer. And that's going to continue. That said, I thought it was the best game Cam played all year. If I had to rank Cam's performances, I'd say this was number one, and I would say Seattle was number two. Now, the difficulty between this Chiefs team, again, they're not the Chiefs, and that Seahawks team, I think is night and day. Because again, this was the JV Chiefs. The Seahawks, that may be the best team in the NFL. And I think that was Cam's best performance, but he didn't have the win, the domination, the drives, he didn't have what he had today. So when you say, I just can't wait for you to throw Cam under the bus, because again, I'm not a fan of Cam's. I wish they hadn't have picked him. I wouldn't have picked him. If you think I'm going to come on the show today and tell you Cam sucked today, I'm not going to do that. Again, I just see it how it is. And then I just tell you what it is based off what I see. And I thought today was Cam's best game. Brett says, I am a season ticket member, and I absolutely wanted the Titans to lose every game here on out. Again, I feel like a lot of times in life, when it comes to how I make future decisions, I used what has happened in the past as a guide. Now, what has happened in the past will not always be what happens next. And when it comes to building a football team, there are more than one ways to skin a cat. You know, sometimes you can build a team, defense, run the ball, win the Super Bowl that way. Sometimes you can have the elite quarterback, and he can carry you to the Super Bowl, a la Patrick Mahomes. But there's all these different ways to develop a team, all these different ways to develop a quarterback, all these different ways to coach it, to build it, whatever you want. So I understand that just because what happened in the past didn't matter going forward, that what has happened in the past happened in the past. It doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to happen in the future. But in my experience, I've seen the Titans win some of these meaningless games at the end of the season, and the players say, well, they're not meaningless to us. And the coaches say, well, they're not meaningless to us. And I've said, well, you know what? I don't think they're meaningless. And then they end up being meaningless. It meant nothing. The Titans went on the road to Miami in 2023 and came back from down 14 in the fourth quarter and went for 2 and got it and scored a touchdown and won the game. And Will Levis had that moment, and it meant nothing except that instead of Joe Alt, you have J.C. Latham. That's all it meant. And I have the same experience of 2015, getting the number 1 pick, trading out of it, building up a team that was competing for the Super Bowl, in large part because of that trade. So if I've looked at it and said, hey, having the number 1 pick helped you build a team to compete for the Super Bowl, and winning a meaningless game cost you Joe Alt or Malik Neighbors, it's like, well, then I've learned these meaningless games don't matter. Especially meaningless games with a coaching staff that is not going to be sticking around at the end of the year. Although I'll say this, play more games like that down the stretch, and it's going to be very convenient for Amy Adams Strunk to keep Mike McCoy. And Paul Kaharski is going to have a heart attack if Amy Adams Strunk keeps Mike McCoy. Though I don't think that's going to happen. Grant says, let's see if Jared has any sense about him or if he's just an internet troll now. Again, are you looking for me to tell you that Cam played well? That was Cam's best game. That was Cam Ward's best game, in my opinion. That game and the Seattle game are the 2 games where I look at Cam and I'm like, you know what? Cam Ward played well. And let me just state for everybody out there, while I'm doing this, while we're having this discussion when it comes to Cam, I thought one thing that I really liked about Cam today was when Kansas City blitzed, he didn't try to get away from the pressure to do something stupid at any point. He took sacks today. And again, nobody wants to see the quarterback sacked, but sometimes it's better just to keep the ball than it is to try to extend the play, and then you run backwards and you lose more yards, or you carry the ball like a loaf of bread and you fumble the ball, and it's even worse. So, again, I don't know if that's growth on Cam's part. I certainly think there's been growth as far as the development of the offense is concerned and the way that they've been running the football. And Tajay Spears today looked like a player. Again, I don't know if that's because Tajay was out there playing against JV players or if it was because Tajay actually might be a player if he could ever stay healthy. But Tajay Spears looked like a player. You know, Chim DK and Alec Iomanner bother me for two different reasons. DK bothers me because he can't catch the ball. Yes, he had the great catch on the sideline, and he's a great punt returner and a great kick returner, but he cannot consistently catch the ball. Cam is hitting him in the hands at least once a week. He's dropping it. He's looking at his hands like, oh my God, what am I doing here? And you cannot be a starting receiver in the NFL if you can't catch ball. Io Manor just doesn't have a lot of talent. Io Manor is not fast. Io Manor is not particularly big. Io Manor does not make contested catches on a consistent basis. Io Manor does not separate very well. He's just a fourth wide receiver in the NFL. That's just it. So with those guys, with Cam hitting them in the hands and them dropping the ball, and Cam trying to get it to Io Manor, and there's not a lot of guys on this team that actually have the talent to be impactful NFL players. Spears has speed, and I'm not a Spears fan. Okonkwo has speed, and I'm not an Okonkwo fan. But what this coaching staff is doing at the end of the year is they're getting the ball to the guys that can run, which is DK, who can't catch, Okonkwo, who has shown a history of not being able to catch and cannot block, and Spears, who cannot stay healthy. But at least they can run. One guy says, Kansas City made half their team inactive. Titans fans taking a victory lap over nothing. I have to ask, are Titans fans taking a victory lap? I mean, I don't think Titan fans, again, I don't know what they're saying in the locker room. It would not surprise me if inside the locker room they actually are saying, but guys, we beat the Chiefs. I mean, they still are the defending 3-time AFC champions. Now, they won't be next year. And this team, this Kansas City team, fucking stinks. But I could see the Titans saying, we beat the Chiefs, and feeling good about it. But I don't think the fans feel that way. I don't think there's again, there's some of you guys that have your head so far up your ass that I can't help you. But I think reasonable fans know that, hey, Kansas City was mailing it in there. And again, I still don't even know who the quarterback was for Kansas City. Justin says, excuse me. You're right on that. Kansas City was awful all around today. Would have been smack if Patrick Mahomes was playing, but it doesn't take away from Cam's performance against a good defense. First of all, I don't think that Kansas City defense is the top 10 Kansas City defense. I don't think that, again, they had so many guys inactive and they were just mailing it in. I talked about this when it comes to distractions in the NFL years and years and years and years ago when the Cleveland Browns announced that they were moving to Baltimore. Bill Belichick was the coach. And the Cleveland Browns announced that they were moving to Baltimore. And they went out there that week and got absolutely freaking smoked by the Houston Oilers. And Belichick and Ozzie Newsome and everybody else involved with the team at that time shrugged and said, when the owner comes out on Tuesday and says we're moving the team to Baltimore, there's no way to get the team focused for Sunday. Simple as that. I said that when Amy fired John Robinson in the middle of the week before the Jacksonville game, and the Titans went out there and got their asses kicked. And it was like, well, that had nothing to do with the game. Of course it did. It was a huge distraction. Kansas City is a Super Bowl contender every year. They played in the Super Bowl last year. They played in the Super Bowl the year before that. They played in the Super Bowl the year before that. And so for the first time in an eon, Kansas City went to war this Sunday without anything to play for and without Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. You think Kansas City was saying, all right, boys, let's strap it up. Let's go all in. Let's get this victory like our lives depended on it. There's just no way emotionally to be able to do that. So when you're like, Cam took it against a top 10 defense, Cam played well. Cam played, again, what I think was his best game of the season. Let's not get carried away, though, and act as if Cam went out there and did that to the 2000 Ravens. Let's be careful. Kurt says Kansas City has to do a mini rebuild. Not good for them. I am kind of fascinated by the future in Kansas City. You know, they kept talking about cap space on the broadcast today, which I thought was hilarious. Adam Schefter went out this week and talked about all the cap space the Titans are going to have. Kevin Harlan was talking on the CBS broadcast about all the cap space the Titans are going to have. It is clear that the Titans, whether it is, you know, through back channels of Brinker and Borgonzi talking to these guys saying, hey, you know, we're going to have the most cap space in the league, or whether it's their PR people pushing that out there. It's obvious the Titans want you to know that they're going to have a bunch of money to spend in free agency. And that's great. Now, I don't know what's going to be available in free agency, and that's more important than whether or not they're going to spend the money. I think they're actually equally important, because if there's nothing out there to spend it on, then you're screwed. And if you're not going to spend it and there are good players to go out and get, then you're screwed. So they're equally important. But they're talking about Kansas City, and they kept flashing up this chart of all these guys that are free agents at the end of the year. And Kansas City, what are they going to do? And what are they? I don't know. But I know this. When you've got Mahomes as your quarterback, you do not throw away seasons. When you've got Andy Reid as the coach, Andy Reid is not interested in being bad for 2 years in a row. Andy, at this point in his career, I think, would leave and go somewhere else instead of, okay, well, it's going to take a couple of years to build this up. So I don't know what the future holds for Kansas City, because this team, they are awful. So Jason Anderson hosts the midday show in Kansas City on the radio. He and I used to work together in, he and I used to work together in Louisville. And Jason Anderson, he said to me today, I texted him, I said, this team sucks. Like, this team sucks. And he texted me back, and he said that, people don't realize how much Mahomes has covered up the last 2 years. These next 3 weeks will show just how bad this roster is without 15 at quarterback. I'm telling you, I think that Chiefs team is as good or bad as the Titans without Mahomes. I think they are as good or as bad as the Titans without Mahomes. And that's why they're a 6-win football team with Mahomes, who is still playing at the Mahomes level. Woo. Andrew says that a boy, Jared, moved them goalposts. What goalposts? I said Cam had his best performance. Whoop-de-freaking do. If you're sitting here thinking like, oh, the Titans beat the Chiefs, Jared, what do you think now? The show on Friday was me saying they're going to beat the Chiefs. They're going to beat the Chiefs, and it's going to be a bad thing because it's going to hurt their draft status, and that's exactly what fucking happened today. So I'm sorry for being right. What do you want? Move the goalposts about what? Lincoln, at this point, I'm convinced you care more about being right about Cam than him developing regardless of the opponent. Well, I don't know what you want from me. Like, do you want me to be happy that Cam hit 2 throws today because Cam has missed those throws in the past? And do you want me to think that now Cam all of a sudden is going to be an accurate passer? Because that's what he needs to do. The development for Cam is not going to be what happens in these games. The development for Cam is going to be in the offseason with his mechanics. Can he rebuild the way he throws the ball? And once he does rebuild the way he throws the ball, can he carry that into training camp and the season? And you don't know the answer to that, and I don't know the answer to that. And to be honest, they don't know the answer to that. They really don't. I talked about this when Robbie Stanley kept telling me that the Titans needed to play Will Levis in 23, and he kept saying, you need to see what you have in Levis. And I kept saying, you know, when it comes to these teams, for the most part, they know what they have in these players. Now, there may be a guy, you know, at the bottom of the roster that doesn't get a lot of reps, that doesn't practice much, that all of a sudden gets out there and plays well, and it's like, oh, wow, this guy might actually have a little something. But that's usually not the case. Usually they see in practice, like, hey, this guy's pretty good. and they know what they have. But fans don't know what they have because fans don't see practice. Kansas City knew what they had in Mahomes. That's why as soon as the season was over, they traded Alex Smith to Washington. Because it's like, well, Patrick's ready. He's our guy. They knew that because of practice. Not because of, well, we got to see the development. Cam Ward's development is going to come this offseason. This offseason, he has got to rework his mechanics. And if he can rework his mechanics and become an accurate passer the way that Josh Allen did in Buffalo after COVID, then he's got a shot. And if not, Cam will never be an elite quarterback because you cannot be an elite quarterback in the NFL if you cannot put the ball where it is supposed to go on a consistent basis. Case in point, the fourth down throw to Gunnar Helm. That ball has to be more catchable. Although I did think that when I watched it in Lifetime that Helm got the foot in, and then when I saw the replay, I knew Helm didn't get the foot in, and then I saw media people at the game saying they should challenge, and I'm like, his foot was out of bounds. Am I crazy about that? Sanchez says, Cam finally had one good game from start to finish. Good on him. Let's see it again. Agreed. I think next week I'll have some juice to it. Tyler Shuck versus Cam. The Saints are playing well. Witty actually says something I agree with. Blakeman should not officiate playoff games. So I don't know what the deal is with the NFL and their obsession with Clete Blakeman. But Clete Blakeman is a terrible referee. And his crew stinks. And this has been something I've noticed for like 5 or 6 years. The league props up Clete Blakeman. He is always calling a conference championship game or he's calling the Super Bowl. And yet the 1 or 2 times a year the Titans get him, and the Titans never get him because the league likes to put Clete Blakeman on the important games. I watch a Clete Blakeman crew ref the game, and I'm like, this crew's terrible. And yet, you say Clete Blakeman shouldn't get any playoff games, and I'm here to tell you right now, Clete Blakeman's going to get some playoff games because he always gets playoff games. John says, not the Titans' fault. The Chiefs mailed it in. You play the team in front of you. I do agree with that. I mean, I think the context is important when it comes to deciphering how big of a victory this is or what it means for Cam or anything like that. But agreed. I mean, what are you supposed to say? Hey, don't play as hard. Can't do that. Lincoln says, Mike McCoy has actually done a fine job babysitting the team and making sure they put a team on the field. Not saying he should be promoted, but it should be acknowledged. I think we're getting dangerously close with Mike McCoy. And that if Mike McCoy wins some more games, Mike McCoy might have a shot at keeping the job, which I did not think was possible at any point. But here's what I know about the Titans. The Titans, number 1, are cheap. The Titans, number 2, are stupid. And the Titans, number 3, have an owner that is paying a head coach that she didn't know. In Amy's experience, again, I talked about how I lived through 2015. They got the number 1 pick and what that became, and that's why I want the number 1 pick. In Amy's experience, I worry there's a chance that she could look at Mike McCoy as the next Mike Mularkey. Remember, nobody else would have hired Mike Mularkey to be a head coach in the NFL in 2016. And the Titans hired Mike Mularkey in 2016 to be the head coach because Amy was comfortable with Mike Mularkey. J-Rob didn't want Mike Mularkey, but Amy did. So they hired Mike Mularkey. And I do believe Mike Mularkey and his old pawpaws taught that young team how to win, how to be pros, etc. And there was a big noticeable difference between Mularkey, the interim head coach, and Mularkey, the head coach. The coaching staff was different. The way they did things was different. The way they ran the operation was different. And I'm sure Mike McCoy would probably do the same thing. That if Mike McCoy became the head coach, that the coaching staff would be different. I say this because I do think there's a chance that if Amy likes Mike McCoy, she could tell herself, well, I had that feeling about Mike Mularkey and it worked. So I do think Mike McCoy is getting dangerously close to keeping his job. Well, dangerously close. Dangerously close to it actually being a discussion for Amy is the way I'll label it. GBT says, Jared, in my opinion, the Titans record this year is 0-15 because all 3 wins were pure luck. Hey, we haven't said this yet today. Congratulations to the Titans for matching last year's win total. Congratulations. I didn't think the Titans were going to make it. I mean, I thought the Titans, after they won that miracle in Arizona, I thought they were going 1-16. I really did. I did not think they were going to win another game the rest of the year. I didn't think they were going to win at Cleveland. I did think going into this game that they were going to win this game only because of what had happened at Kansas City last week. So congratulations to the Titans for getting one of those 3 wins out there, and now you're tied with last year. And you're tied with 2015, and you're actually better than 2014. And yet I still think 2015 would beat this team. Justin says, I think the offense looks significantly better because of the lack of pre-snap penalties. I thought, by the way, again, going back to the Blakeman thing, and I don't think this really matters, but I might as well bring it up. Am I the only one that thought Jeffrey Simmons got absolutely fucked by Clete Blakeman today? That Simmons ran out there, put his hand up, declared eligible, set the block, Tony Pollard runs it in, touchdown, and they took it off the board because Simmons didn't declare, and Simmons absolutely declared. It just bothered me a little bit. That's all I'm saying. David says, imagine paying money to go watch the team lose. Well, I didn't go to the game, but all those Kansas City fans went to the game, and I guess the Kansas City fans watched them lose. I felt bad. Like, in all seriousness, for the Kansas City fans that I know bought tickets for this game ahead of time, thinking, well, I want to have the tickets ahead of time. I don't want to buy them then, get down to Nashville and not have them. So let's buy them and let's pay $200 and let's go to the game. And go to the game. And the local media was making a big deal about how many Chief fans were there. Yeah, because they're the ones that paid for the tickets. Titan fans probably either already sold their tickets or they're part of season ticket packages. So they're like, yeah, why would I go to the game? I don't need to go to the game. Chief fans are like, I already bought the tickets, planned a trip down to Nashville. I mean, I might as well go to the game. So I think that's the difference. This one guy says, tough day to be a Cam hater. Cam's best game. I will give him that. That's it for us. Like and subscribe. Thank you to Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Again, live tomorrow, 2 o'clock, like we always are. That is it for Postgame Live. Enjoy whatever you want to enjoy. I've got a Christmas dinner I am headed to. That's it for us. Stillman & Company, 440 Sports. Like and subscribe. See everybody live tomorrow at 2 o'clock.